Hi guys, I'm back with another Nerd Rants video. Today we're going to be talking about probably one of my favorite fantasy movies. And fun fact, this was actually one of the only situations I've heard about where the movie was made first and then they wrote a book about the movie after the fact. So it's a very interesting situation, and this book still does have a lot more lore and digs deeper into the story because you're able to do that with a book. But it's, then now the movie and the book are very, very accurate to each other, and the book kind of just allows you to glean more from the story, and the movie is in Spanish, so you have to read subtitles in order to fully understand the movie. So the book is a little bit, I guess, easier to comprehend in that context, especially if you aren't great at reading subtitles while you are watching a movie. So that is, I guess, the upside to that. All right, so this is also, I feel like, a very obscure movie slash book, so I'd be surprised if any of you know about it, what it is, before I reveal here, but here we go. It is Pan's Labyrinth. It is such a cool concept for a story, and the movie is well done. And guys, look at this book. It's beautiful. The cover is gorgeous, and underneath the sleeve of the book, we have the faun, who basically, Pan, the guy who in a way, I think, created the labyrinth. And on the back, we have the main character with the book that plays an important role in the story, and the moon behind her. And oh, it's gorgeous. And we have illustrations on the inside. Let me find one in a minute. Illustrations like that. And it's split into chapters which tell the actual story, and then the chapters are split into parts, and before each of the parts there's a little history chapter, I guess, where it explains the lore behind an object that appears in the story. And each of those little lore chapters, I guess, have illustrations before them. And so this is a very aesthetically pleasing book to begin with, but it is also an amazing story. The movie was directed by Guillermo del Toro. I, off the top of my head, can't think of anything else that he has done. I know I've heard of other movies that he has done, but I cannot think of them. If you know any of them, feel free to comment titles below. But then the book was co-written by Guillermo del Toro and Cornelia Funk. If that name sounds familiar, means you've probably read the Inkheart Trilogy. She is the author of that. So not only is this a really cool story created by Guillermo del Toro, it is written in book form by probably one of my favorite authors. I love the Inkheart Trilogy so much. This book is really great. I'm trying not to do a huge spoiler because I know this is probably not a super well-known movie, or even less well-known that it's in a book form. So I would love for you guys to go and experience the story for yourselves. I guess what's in, the synopsis. So what can I share with you guys? So basically, the synopsis doesn't give a whole lot away about the story. So it's kind of hard to tell everything, I guess, is a spoiler then. So the overview of the story is that the main character is a princess from, it's sort of described as an underworld of sorts. It is a magical world, but it's underneath our world, and access to going to the surface is forbidden. So the main character is a princess who, out of her curiosity, goes to the surface. a series of events. She gets amnesia, so she totally forgets who she is. And she is living with who she believes to be her mother, her pregnant mother, and they go to move in with who, with her believed to be stepfather, who is the villain of the story and he's a general, and he is an absolute douchebag, and he tortures people, and he's a horrible human being. And this story is her rediscovering who she is and finding a way back to her home. So it's a really cool story, and it goes through like different trials that she has to endure, and the creatures involved in the trials and what she has to do are really, really cool. And throughout this, despite learning that she isn't of our world and that she isn't actually her mother, her believed to be mother's daughter, she's still struggling with her mother being, one, in a horrible toxic relationship, and two, being pregnant, and there's complications, and she's getting sick while she's pregnant. And so dealing with kind of the duality of her life, having grown up with the memories of her mother and this family that she has now, and learning as well who she really is, and knowing she has a family below, and that they're waiting for her to come back, and they're hoping she comes back, but none of them will come to the surface. And Pan's Labyrinth, the faun. First of all, the faun is awesome. And he looks incredible. And I think, if I'm remembering right, my brother told me that pretty much, like, the faun himself is completely practical effects. It is a guy in a costume, and it is fantastic. Some of it is CGI, just, obviously, to make him more expressive and all that. But it's an actual costume, and it's fantastic, and it looks amazing. And any CGI there is in this movie is also great. It's just a very good quality movie, and the actors do a phenomenal job. And it is dark. It is a darker book. Because one, her stepdad, quote unquote stepdad, does torture people, and there are some gory scenes. It's not overly gory, but there are some. It has its moments. But yeah, so the main storyline is fantastic, but there's also a side storyline going on this entire time of a rebellion going on, who the general, her stepdad, is his forces. They're living in a base in the middle of the woods, trying to fight these rebels. Meanwhile, there are rebel spies within their staff, and even the side plot is fantastic. And oh my gosh. Don't you love it when there's a story where even the side characters are built up to the point where they're actually people, instead of, it's like, oh, the main character, they have all these layers and all these things, and I've spent so much time on the main character, and then the side characters are just two-dimensional cardboard cutouts of people. Oh, I really, really enjoy when side characters are fleshed out. We don't necessarily get their entire story, or learn everything about them, but we get like implications of their story. We get an actual like personality out of them, and having real people versus just the two-dimensional characters that we sometimes get with the side characters, and honestly, in some rare occasions, in the main characters as well. And those are the kinds of characters that I hate, so I really enjoy that in this story, not only do we get to see the layers and the personality of the main character and those immediately around her, but the secondary characters as well. And I love that the side plot is fleshed out enough that it is still intriguing when we're not necessarily following the main storyline, and we branch off and have a little adventure into what's happening with the rebels. And it's very enjoyable. And the amount of lore we get in the book, I kind of love lore. I am kind of a lore nerd. So when I get to understand why things are the way they are, what cultures and beliefs and all of that, and the things that go on behind the scenes of a world and behind the scenes of a character, I love it. And getting to understand the significance of objects, of places, of people, and it's great, and it fleshes out the world. And I love lore, and I love lore so much. Lore and world building and all the fun stuff that goes into creating just even the setting of a story. I absolutely love it. Now, obviously, you can definitely go way too far with that. We're at the point where you're just info dumping. So it really is a skill that you build up in learning how to portray your world and give information about it without just spouting off a lecture, a history lecture about your world that has no relevance to the immediate situation. So it's a skill that I very much appreciate, one that I continue to work on, because in fear of myself info dumping in stories, sometimes I won't share enough relevant information. So it's really, there's two sides of the pendulum, not sharing enough information and sharing way too much. So it's really trying to find the middle ground and that sweet spot of where you're sharing information as it's needed, and you're not boring your author, boring your reader, but you're also not holding back information that is important and relevant to a situation and leaving them in the dark. And I mean, I've come across a lot of stories that do this well, and they mesh and they meet in the middle, and they have mastered that art of sharing the information that needs to be shared. But yes, Pan's Labyrinth does that really well, and I honestly do love how they do it, because in this, where it's like the lore chapters, and then in the fourth, and I think a little bit in the fifth book of Dragon Watch by Brandon Mull, in the fourth book they have an entire chapter that is the main character Kendra reading a story about the dragon slayers. So the entire chapter, the longest chapter in the book, is just a story explaining who the dragon slayers are, how they came to be, and it's the most info dumpy part of the book, but because of the way he worked it into the story and how it's written, it doesn't feel like an info dump, and it's not boring, at least not to me. I absolutely love that chapter because, again, I love lore. And in the fifth book, we get kind of learning a lot about the different abilities that the main characters have in the story. There's a little bit of it's not exactly info dumping, but we get a lot of the information coming at us, but it's done in a way where it's appropriate, and you understand why it works, and it does work, and I love getting that and understanding things better, because I am the kind of person who who throws myself into a fantasy world and gets really into a story, and so lore is sometimes my life, especially when I'm writing my own story. Coming up with lore is sometimes the most fun I get out of the writing process. But yeah, so Pan's Labyrinth is phenomenal. If you want to watch if you're not great at reading subtitles and watching a movie at the same time, definitely read the book at least, and you don't have to necessarily watch the movie, because this honestly will go pretty much shot for shot what happens in the movie, and you might be able to understand it better because you don't have to read the dialogue and at the same time be watching what happens in the scene. If you are good at reading subtitles, definitely watch the movie. I honestly found it really helpful. I read the book first and then I watched the movie, so I knew what was happening because I had read the book and I knew the story already. So I didn't necessarily have to pay attention to the subtitles. I could just skim them. I didn't have to read every single word, and I could bounce back and forth a little bit faster because I didn't have to read everything. So if you want to do that, where you understand, you want to watch the movie, but you're a little bit iffy about your ability to read subtitles, definitely read the book first and then watch the movie so you understand the story before you throw yourself into watching a movie that is completely in Spanish and have to read the subtitles to understand the story and sometimes miss what's happening on screen. But yes, if you're confident in your ability to read subtitles, I highly recommend the movie as well. It is fantastic and so great, and the font is super impressive. So, I mean, everything's super impressive in the movie, but the font just in general, knowing kind of the background of this is a costume with very little CGI, it makes it even more enjoyable to see. But yes, if you are not great with the darker stuff and some of the gore, I don't know if I'd recommend it. It is, like I said, a little bit darker. So you're at your discretion, however much gore and dark topics you think that you can handle. That's entirely your prerogative, but it was fantastic, and highly recommend reading / watch it and or watching Pan's Labyrinth. Okay, I think that's it for this one. You can drop your thoughts in the comments. If you know what Pan's Labyrinth is, great. I'd love to nerd with you about it in the comments, because besides my brother, I have not met anyone else who has heard of, let alone watched Pan's Labyrinth. So finding those people would be awesome, because I don't know if this book / movie has a fandom or not. So yes, drop your thoughts in the comments. It's like obviously still doing covers and AMVs. If you have requests for things I could do for that, I would love to hear them. And yeah, again, even requests for these videos, I have a very long list of things that I need to read, but I am literally constantly adding to it. But if you really want me to read something, I'll try to get to it. Or I might do better with movies. If you request movies, I might be a little bit better at getting to those than I would be at books, but I'm always looking for books that I can read. So yeah, requests for songs, books, movies, things I should react to, review, whatever. Drop those in the comments. Nerd out about whatever you want, really. That's kind of why I made this channel, so people can nerd out. And I'll see you all next time.